I've been noticing over the past couple of days as we've been doing some of these application problems that we have been having some issues with what formula to use and when. Now, I am going to mention, before we get started, I have my notes ready, that basically for all of these that we're doing, one of two things is going to be going on. I'm going to be using my growth or decay models, okay, these guys, whenever it doesn't have to do with interest, okay? But when it does have to do with interest, I'm going to use this guy. Now, let me make some mention of interest here while we're here. Some of you have been having issues with n, okay? This whole number of times compounded in 1 year. We talked about some of them when we did the notes, but I also, again, wanted to go back over how many times does it happen in a year. It doesn't mean that if my t-value becomes more years, I multiply it. So if you're told annually, your n value in the formula will always be 1. If it says semi-annually, your n value will always be 2. Monthly, your n value will always be 12. Okay? These aren't going to change problem by problem. Quarterly is 4. Daily is 365. Okay? Now, we talked about annually, quarterly, and daily before. So semi-annually I get, monthly I might get. But otherwise, those are things, again, that we're going to be using. This will pop back up in a minute. What I wanted to do is just take a moment and a couple of examples of some different things and talk about some applications you have to watch for. So for instance, and I already gave my stuff away by having it written here, well, that's okay. We'll talk through it. Assume a car is depreciating, same as decay, the value is going down, at the rate of 12% per year. Okay? It is not an interest problem, and we are in decay mode. A is my initial amount. What's my initial amount? Well, the first year I see on here is 2005. That's the starting value of my car, $22,400. So then I look, and I did do one thing goofy. Some of you probably already saw it and are yelling at me in class. It's depreciated, it's minus. I wish it were going up in value. So minus my rate to the t. Here's the cool thing that I can do. If I go ahead and don't do silly things like that in the middle of this, if I go ahead and punch this into my calculator, now I could just do guess and check, but who wants to guess and check for all these things? And no, it's not time to go home yet. So, for instance, if I wanted to do 2007, we're going to move this out of the way, I'd be like, okay, punch it into y equals 22,400, 1 minus 0.12. I'm just going to use to the x since I'm using it in here. And I notice, okay, there's my first year, 22,400. This represents 0, my base year. It hasn't depreciated at all. I haven't even had it a year yet. So then, however many years later it is, I just go down to that value and write that amount in. And the cool thing about this is, once I have it set up, I just go to the year that I want. And no, you still don't get to go home. And again, we can just round to the nearest whole number on these. But that's what I'm on the lookout for with these. Okay? Now, could I do it without the fancy calculator? Sure. I could just go ahead, type in the 22,400, 1 minus 0.12, and if I knew it was year 2, just put in a 2. And I know with the cents, but again, if we round to the nearest dollar, it would be about the same. And some of you, if you do rounding, may be off a couple of bucks or a few cents from what I am, and that's okay, as long as you're getting things set up well. So again, decay growth, going to be using the 1 minus. However, when we get to interest, note, and you've got to read carefully. Some of you just whip through and want to make every single problem the same. You can't do that. I'm starting in 2000 with $7,000. It wants to know how much is in the account on January 1st, 2010. Not next year, 10 years from now. My T is going to be 10. My principal is 7,000. That's what I started with. And again, plug for the notes. Principal, 1 plus my rate over, oh, there's that blasted N again. What I'm going to do for each of these, and I'm just going to do it this way for now. That's in general what this looks like. Now, my N value is going to be changing, so I can't put this in the graphing part of the calculator. We'll come back to simple interest in just a second, because I want to continue to stress what we're doing here with these guys. So compounded yearly, my N value is going to be 1. Semi-annually, it's 2. Quarterly, it's 4. Monthly, daily. The formula is going to be the exact same for all of these. So like if I was doing this one. Rate's still the same. N value is different. And then N times 10. When you're punching this into the calculator, one other thing you have to be careful of, and I made sure I did it on mine. I don't need an extra set of parentheses here. Notice I just put it all inside one big set. But when I do my exponent, you either need to multiply them together ahead of time, or if you're not going to, you need to put them in parentheses, because otherwise your answer is not going to make much sense. And if you go to the nearest whole dollar, again, that's fine. I don't care. But there is a difference between this and simple interest. Now, simple interest, I'm not going to put it on the quiz. Yeah, why are you putting it here? Because I want you to see what the difference would be. Simple interest is this, principal times rate times time. So if I just did that, you're like, well, that's no big deal. So 7,000 times my rate, again, still has to be in decimal form. Now, times time. I'm just going to put the 10 in there. You're like, but that's all I get? No, I'd still have to add that back to my principal. Okay, so I'd only earn $99.75 if I'm doing it this way. You're like, okay, so what's the difference? Well, if I'm paid compounded, simple, compounded, now I'm going to use my formula again, because as soon as I see the word compounded, that means my interest that I'm paid each year gets included when I get my interest the next year. Whereas when it's just simple, I don't get that. I mean, it's not $1 million difference, but hey, it's like an extra $600, a little over $600, so that's not a bad deal. But again, when it's interest, watch the T, watch the N's. Okay. Last one, and even though we talked about this yesterday, I want to do one of them. When you're computing annual yield, interest earned over initial amount. For example, if we were doing letter B, interest earned. Well, I have this much now, I had this much before. Wonder how much, I figure how much interest I had. Oh yeah, subtract them. So it'd be $656. But let's see. Initial amount, how much did I start with? $8,000. Handy dandy calculator time. Okay, don't write .082, drive me crazy. Remember, when we're doing percentages, you move your decimal point 2 places to the right. If in doubt, multiply it by 100. Okay, This is your extra little help on this. Again, I won't do this every time, but it's something where we start to see a struggle. We're going to try and take care of it. So refer back to this video if you need to. Hope you were watching and jotted some of this stuff down if you've been having issues with it. And again, keep your notes out. Trust me, it'll help you.